When I look back over my career, I realize that the most overlooked concept in our business is store of value. Hi, I'm Mark Little. I've been a comprehensive financial advisor for decades, and I want to talk about something that will hopefully represent a paradigm shift in the way that you view client assets, especially when you sit down with them for the very first time. It's more of a mindset issue for you. Let me explain a few memories I have that are going to require you to think of client assets in terms of this term, store of value. So, before I was a financial advisor, back when I was a teenager, in 1971, I worked as a cashier in a grocery store. I was just a kid, and when I was young, the coins that we call dimes were actually made out of silver. Not pure silver, but almost pure silver. As I went to high school and got a job, I was a cashier in a grocery store and I came across a lot of dimes. You would look at the dimes in the drawer from the customers and the silver ones would stick out. The regular dimes had a coppery color on the edge. The silver dimes were pure silver. When you looked at them from the side, they almost jumped out of the drawer. They were so obvious. So I would pull dimes out of my pocket and I would swap out the silver ones for regular dimes. I asked the manager if this would be okay. He goes, they're just worth a dime. Yeah, sure, no problem. So I would swap them for the ones in my pocket. Now, I had an instinct back then that I want you to think about. I thought these silver ones are so cool and they're a precious metal. They must be worth more than a dime. Actually, back then they were slightly worth more than a dime. I think I looked it up and they were worth 11 cents instead of 10 cents. That's not true today. Flash forward. Today, those same dimes are worth almost $3. That right there was my first lesson in purchasing power. That to get a dime's worth of silver back in 1971, you'd have to have $2 or $3 today. Here's another example of purchasing power, and I'll get to the point how this affects you as a financial advisor. In 1961, an ounce of gold, so I've talked about silver, let's talk about gold. An ounce of gold was $35. So what does $35 purchase? The point I'm making is an ounce of gold, when I was a kid, my dad was an executive at a big company. He'd go in with his suit and tie every day. That suit cost 35 bucks. When I was a kid, an ounce of gold would purchase the equivalent of a nice men's suit. Today, have you looked at gold prices lately? As I'm recording this, gold is about $3,300 an ounce. Guess what? An ounce of gold still buys a nice men's suit. So all these years, even though gold has grown from $35 now up to $3,300, as far as purchasing power, it's the same, but it preserved the wealth. You might think as a financial advisor, gold increased in price. It's like an investment. It grew. No, the point I'm making at is gold didn't grow. Throughout history, the purpose of gold was not to grow, but to preserve wealth. Back in ancient history, if a soldier working for some Caesar was paid in gold, if they tucked their gold coins in the mattress and went off to war for 10 or 20 years, when they came back, no matter what happened in the economy or with the wars or anything, that gold preserved the value. The purpose of gold is to be a store of value. So what's the punchline for me? Back in 1988, I was a newlywed. We bought our first house. Good for us. Purchased a 4-bedroom starter home for $35,000. It's where we lived when my daughter was born. I'll have you know that I paid twice as much for my most recent new car than I did for my first house. Now, that's not progress. That's inflation. So how does this affect clients? I want you to think about this. The point is that clients come in to us with two needs. The first need that a client has is the one that maybe you haven't thought about as much as I'd like you to, and that's the point of this video. The first use case for a financial advisor in the mind of clients, and I do lots of research on multimillionaires, when you survey affluent people and ask them, why would you pay a fee for a financial advisor? The number one reason is this point that we're talking about. They have money that they've earned, they've accumulated this pot, and they first and foremost want to keep it. They want to preserve the purchasing power of what they've already earned. If you haven't thought of it this way, money is an individual's time and energy put into an abstracted form that we call money. We work and toil our whole life. We add more value to the world than we consume, and what's left over is the accumulated money. So the first use of a financial advisor is to maintain the purchasing power of the client's money. The second reason that clients hire a financial advisor and they're willing to pay the fees is that in addition to keeping their money, they've established objectives in the future. So they hire advisors to keep their money that they've already earned and to identify things in their life that they'd like to achieve before the end of their life and have a professional create a plan to achieve them. But the thing is, when a financial advisor first sits down with a new client, they often jump mentally to growth. You look at a client's portfolio, you look at what they're trying to achieve, and you think, I can grow this. And you think through the options of how you're going to do it. I want you to think about this. I want you to think in terms of store of value first. Think about, what would I do if all I wanted to do was maintain the purchasing power of this? It's a two-step process. Let's figure out how to maintain the purchasing power, and then if it falls short of being able to achieve the client's objectives, then we will establish and discuss a plan for growth. In other words, flip the script. Think about store of value first. What would that have to grow just to stay even? You think you understand inflation, but go study it. The truth is, with a 7% average inflation rate over the last 100 years, anything less than 7% average annual return, you've just got the client running in place. They're not growing at all. They're just maintaining the purchasing power of their money. This is the point that I want to make. To really understand that monetary inflation is not the inflation advertised rate that they release every month from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which we call Consumer Price Index. No, it's not prices. It's the dilution of the dollar. They're inflating the quantity of dollars by printing new ones and therefore diluting the value of the existing ones. This is an issue to really study when it comes to thinking of how you're going to structure a client's asset allocation. So you think about, wait a minute, if I've got to achieve a 7% real rate of return for the client, that means after fees, after taxes, and certainly after the 7% inflation rate, what even qualifies as an asset class that can consistently deliver at least 7% over time? I can propose a few, but that's not the purpose of this video. But I'll throw a few out there. How about equities in really well-run companies? How about gold? We've talked about gold, silver. What about real estate? Is that on your list? Can real estate produce a 7+% average annual return over time consistently? What about Bitcoin? Now, before you write off Bitcoin, and this video is not about Bitcoin, I want you to remember that Bitcoin was actually engineered by humans for this purpose. It was specifically designed in 2008 as a reaction to the global financial crisis, where they were printing vast amounts of new money, and therefore Bitcoin was released into the world as a store of value and a medium of exchange. So we'll see what happens. Could it be on your list? It certainly has outperformed 7% average annual return for the last 16 years. Matter of fact, it's been the #1 performing asset class since 2009. But again, What are the asset classes that are even capable of generating a persistent return over time of at least 7%? As advisors, our first job is to help clients keep what they've already earned. I want you to think of store of value first. Now, I've written an article. If this resonates with you and you want to think about this at a deeper level to really understand how this can benefit the way that you approach clients and the way you communicate with clients about the wealth that they are considering handing over to you to coordinate for them. So I wrote a full article that you can read on this topic. I encourage you to go read it by joining our free community at themarkofmastery.com. I created themarkofmastery.com 10 years ago as a community of high-end financial advisors who are trying to more perfectly align the value that they're providing to affluent ideal clients than it is right now. The data is clear. Clients have never been unhappier with their current financial advisor. And the opportunity for you is easier than you think, but the important thing is to perfectly align what you're doing with the way that clients think. And reading this full article will help you consider store of value as a paradigm shift, not so much in what you actually end up recommending, but more as a way of communicating with clients. So I hope to see you over at themarkofmastery.com. No charge. We'd love you to join us.